Okay, right. Let's ease into this one. It's been a long day. I need to. This isn't gin. It needs to be gin. Because, oh my goodness, what the fuck is going on with the Htoic mercenaries? They've just released Htoic. If you somehow haven't seen that over the last hour or so, they've parted ways with their corner, who is, in my opinion, one of the best corners in the league. And they parted ways with him. Spoke to him briefly, and the organisation hasn't made any official comments on it. I just don't know what they're doing, man. I really don't. This close to a really big week. It's very obvious to anyone who's watching that he isn't the issue within that organisation. And yeah, I might do a video on the mercenaries and just the collapse of their whole team. I don't know what's going on. There are very obviously talented players within that roster. The coaches and the front office really are not helping the situation. You have good pieces and they're ruining it. However, that's not what this video is about. This video is about discussing how I think each team's going to do in the following weekend, what they need to do to win their games, giving my predictions on how I think those games will go, and seeing how we can accurately assume what they're going to do. Maybe give some game plans and have a bit of fun with it. This isn't about the mercenaries. This is about us, me and you, the viewer, watching this video, breaking down some of the actual reasons for teams losing, teams winning, getting into some numbers as well, because more stuff has come out on the ELF website that I can use for these kind of videos. Let's get into it. If you like the video, subscribe, whatever. We're just had a bit of an influx because I was on the ELF Live, so you had a few more regular viewers, hopefully. And let's get into it. See, there's 8 games. It's a big week this week. 8 games is more. There was only 6 last week. The only team that's on a bye week is Munich, and I think they needed that. So let's just get into it. Enough dilly-dallying around. Alright, the first matchup, Barcelona Dragons versus Raiders Tyrrell. Barcelona 2-3, coming off a close loss to Milan. Raiders 4-1, feeling pretty good, I think, to beat 4-1, but had their QB controversies. They're trying to put that behind them now and enter into a middle of the season bit of form, I think. We'll start with Barcelona. Running backs need to carry their weight. I'm going to be completely honest. Not a running back with more than 10 carries is averaging 4 yards per carry. Levi Lewis is the leading rusher, and second behind him only has 149 yards. It's not good enough through 5 games to have only 149 yards be the leading person in that team. Both running backs have taken a lot of carries, have also fumbled, which is causing issues. You cannot have a team that relies on the run as much as they do not perform well in the run. Offensive ranks, they are 8th. They're not the worst at it, but they're certainly not the best. Stemming from that, their run defense, they are last in the league for run defense. Bottom last. And I know some teams have played more than others, so it's kind of a weighted stat. They played 5 games, someone like Paris has only played 3, so of course Barcelona are going to have allowed more rush yards. But if you watch the games, it's very clear that they do not have a very good rush defense. Guess who does have a very good rushing offense? The Raiders Tyrrell, and it's the same sample size of 5 games. They're number 2 through these first 5 games in terms of rushing yards. They have a lot of good running backs. Bonatti, Hasselvanta, Tonko is currently under the under-20 championship, so he's not present with the team. And Cozy Perry can take the ball off. There's a lot of options within the Raiders that could give the Barcelona run defense an incredible amount of issues. The Barcelona defense is bad. I'm going to be honest. 17th in rushing allowed, 15th in passing allowed, 17th in yards allowed, 16th in points allowed. You can't really do much with that. And in the same breath, Levi needs support. You're not going to be able to give him... first of all, the defense isn't supporting him by getting the ball back. Secondly, his receivers are not supporting him enough. He's had injuries to position, so that's not been exactly helpful. Donadelli got injured. Always been a little bit knocked up, and he's had injuries with more depthful Spanish players. But still, the leading receiver for Europeans is 160. It's not good enough through 5 games. And I've already talked about a run game. The offensive line that we've talked about every single week for Barcelona, and it's the same thing. For the Raiders Tyrrell, run game is the strength. We talked about how good their run game is, second in the league with Bonatti and Hasselvanta, all these very talented running backs. They have it. They have a team that cannot stop the run. It makes sense that they're going to run it. They ran it a bunch, over 30 times last week. I expect it to be another 30 kind of run game, to be completely honest. Pressure on the passer. We talked about the offensive line of Barcelona, how poor it is. The Raiders do have some very good pass rushes and defensive pieces. Robert Lackman, Bernard Grub, all of these guys are able to get after the passer with a poor offensive line and a quarterback that has not been exactly accurate under pressure. Building pairs some confidence. Currently, he's kind of hovering around his career average of about 50 to 55%. You're against a team that isn't very good at stopping the pass and has had a lot of blown coverages in zone. Keep him simple. You've got the run game to back it up. This game should be a layup. It really should be. This is an opportunity to nurse people through injuries, keep everyone safe, getting Cozy some confidence by getting him to his receivers, building that connection, getting him more familiar with some of the deeper parts of the playbook, and just trying different things. And I think that could go a long way for them this week. Ultimately, I think it's going to be a comfortable win for the Raiders. I think they're going to win 32-14. I can't see the Dragons busting out much. Maybe they might get one touchdown with the long run or something, but I'm not seeing the vision when it comes to them. Over in the East, you had the Warsaw Panthers versus the Vienna Vikings. Panthers rather famously doing pretty poor this year, 2-3. Vienna, one of the best teams in the league, no doubt. They're 5-0. Wrocław have a poor passing defense, and a lot of people will be surprised by that. I was too. And again, you can say the thing about sample sizes and whatnot. They are 16th for yards allowed in passing. That's bad. There are some very talented defensive pieces on this team, but they need to lock up on the terms of receivers. Vienna have too many good options at receiver, especially Reece Horn coming off an historic day of a top 10 receiving performance of all time in ELF history. You got Noah Torre, who's a hot favourite for Rookie of the Year. You got Schumacher, who's a very talented player. You got Schutz, who has broken out to the scene as a good complementary receiver. Passing defense needs to get better. No excuse for it. You have to lock in. They got William James back, so I expect that to get better. But still, it's a big red flag within that team. Cole is the key. We saw him flash with Uribe last week. Now, it looks like they've got a good connection together. He has only played 2 games. He hasn't been massively involved, granted, and the stats for this week aren't up yet, so I don't have exactly the key numbers for it. But it's believed to be 149 yards in 2 games with 2 touchdowns on 6 catches. He is already above Mazin, he's already above Gentry Adams, he's already above Bender for yardage, and also joint with them with multiple of them with touchdowns. He's a 3rd leading receiver in 2 games. He's an excellent one. I've talked about him all year about how good he is. I want to see him get more of the ball. Chances need to be taken. Points off of turnovers. Creating the turnovers. 3rd and 1s. 4th and 1s. Vienna make mistakes. Vienna not perfect. Vienna beat Wrocław with their backup quarterback. And one of the reasons why they did that with Wrocław is because they didn't make the most of their opportunities. Not just Duncan. The entire team. Obviously Duncan's out, Uribe's in. He's made some, he's been good. He has played a little bit better than Duncan, you could argue, but also against worse competition. Chances need to be taken, otherwise they're going to have a historic repeat of last game. For Vienna, they need to stay focused. They're coming off, they're probably confidence sky high. Epler's done a really good job of coming in and filling that role. He's actually played better than Ben Holmes in the same, less sample size, but more accurate, more touchdowns, 1 more interception, but has also thrown a few more balls. Need to stay focused. They've beaten up on bad teams. They've got sky-high confidence. Don't let that overrun you. We've seen many teams get overconfident and end up falling short. Feed the hot hand. You have Kerry Buchanan, who's having a very good... He's having a breakout season at running back, as I expected him to do. You've got Reece Horn, who's had one of the best games for a receiver in ELF history. You have Noah Torre, as I mentioned, Schultz, Bierbalmer, Schumacher, Raphael. There's a lot of very talented players on this offense that could be used. Feed whoever's hot. They have a bad passing defense, so they're going to be spreading them out thin. With these good receivers, whoever's in the biggest mismatch, I think, could be fed. Keep the creative defense. I've been talking about how much I love that defense pretty much all year. Elmarie Lalo looks like one of the best defensive backs in the league at the moment, honestly. He's got 3 sacks, 5 tackles for a loss. He's played predominantly as a nickel to outside linebacker. Benjamin Straight knows how to turn over the ball. Noah Swankor is an excellent linebacker I'd like to do an evaluation on at some point. Xavier Edwards, Hunter Nichols, all of these guys are excellent. Keep creative. We want to see what we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Just, again, they're that good, and I expect them to win. I'm going to go for a 30-20. I think it'll be quite close, but I'm going to go for a victory for the Vienna Vikings. I think they go 6-0. Warsaw aren't what we thought they were. Probably the game of the week. Rhein Fire 4-1. Madrid Bravos 3-0 in Madrid. Of course, Madrid were the team that ended Rhein Fire's winning streak. That's important, no matter what way you want to look at it. But for Rhein Fire, Glenn VP. Glenn has been phenomenal this year. Rhein have the number 1 rushing offense in the entire league. Glenn has 716 yards already and 9 touchdowns, hasn't fumbled the ball once. He's averaging a touch over 6 yards per carry. He's the guy you feed. It doesn't matter what team you're on. If you have a player doing that well, you give him the fucking ball. Keep clutching up in the fourth. They've not been winning in the first 3 quarters of the last couple of games, yet they've come out and they've won when it mattered most in the fourth. That's the thing that I think that matters most for Rhein Fire, because they have been so good at making comebacks. They keep chipping away those points and are able to come back from deficits that I wouldn't have thought many teams could do. We've seen against Paris, we saw against Berlin. They've got the heart, they've got the energy, but they are vulnerable to big plays. We saw Wilczek with a big play. We saw a couple of Paris players with big plays. They're vulnerable to it. Chunk plays and explosive plays are not a massive problem, but they are absolutely susceptible. And we saw that with Madrid even, last time they played with Obi's big run. Without a quarterback, they're still susceptible to those big plays. For Madrid, getting after the pass protection, Madrid do have one of the best defenses in the league. And again, sample size, blah, blah, blah. They are still number 2 in the league for yards allowed and also passing yards allowed, and are number 1 for points. They have a lockdown defense. The amount of players on that team that are spectacular just goes on and on and on and on and on. Many of those defensive players find themselves on the defensive line. Glenna can come into the box. You have Janelle Pelly, who's been standout outside linebacker. You've got Sebastian Bowen. Haven't seen Alessandro Fernandez, but you've got Hugo Rivera as well. They have a bunch of excellent players that can affect that pass rush. The offensive line for Rhein has not been great. I'm going to be completely honest. The tackles have been burned a few times. Most importantly, though, they have the blueprint. They've done this before. They've won before. Are Rhein going to make adjustments? Of course they're going to make adjustments. But Madrid do have the upper hand. They have had some things that worked extremely well, being Dwayne Obi, being the speed they have within that team. They have the answers. They just need to replicate it again. Another big question that has to be discussed is, has Duncan fully transitioned? He's coming in. He's had a couple of weeks. He had a bye week, which is, I think, incredibly important for his development within that team. Has he fully transitioned? I think that he has. It's up to Rhein Fire to throw some different looks at him. He wasn't in this game last time they played. So he's going to have a different time reading that defense. He's not read the defense like Ryan before when it comes to ELF football. He was reading out the East, which is a lot easier to do than Rhein Fire. So just seeing if he's fully transitioned, I think will go a long way for Rhein Fire, also for Madrid. Score predictions. Death taxes do not bet against Rhein Fire, and I know I say this every week, and they lost against Madrid last week. It's going to be a classic. It's my game of the week. I'm still going to go for a Rhein Fire victory. I think it's going to be really close though. I'm going to go for 22-21. Could go either way. It could go either way, and I don't like making this kind of guess, but it's what you got to do. You got to stand on it as an analyst, back it up with thoughts, and I'm going to go for the Rhein Fire victory. The Verheerwaard Enthroners 0-4, taking on the Milano Seamen 2-3. This one has a lot of ramifications, honestly, for both teams. If Verheerwaard fail to get a victory here, it could be, honestly, the end of their season in terms of chances of wins. They're below the bottom half of pretty much every statistical category, but as are Milan. So there's certainly an interesting dynamic that's going to be going on here. Milan have got a couple wins. They have an opportunity to actually go 500 here. For the Enthroners, though, keeping the ball safe. Now, this was a very big part of the deal with their fumbles. They've had fumbles all year. They've turned the ball over with interceptions. It's not what you want. They've been very poor when it comes to that. Secondly, using the speed. Now, Robitaille is one of the fastest receivers we have in the league. He's going to be able to stretch the defense. But he's not the only one. They do have guys with deceptive speed within that team. And Milan aren't exactly a rapid unit. Defensively, they got Rodon Enrique. I think he's going to be able to cover anything that Milan throw at him as a receiver. But they just need to use it correctly. Turn the balls over with that. Get creative in using certain players in certain positions. This is, it's done. The season's done. You're not going to make the playoffs. You may as well just try different stuff and give players looks at potentially making an impact. Inside pressure is also going to be important. They've dedicated themselves to the run, being Milan. They have Jock Crawford in. They seem like they're going to go for a heavy run again this week. You may as well send the heat. Just see what happens, This is not the time to be worried about experimentation. For Milan, Broncos has confidence now. He performed very well. He was actually probably one of the MVP front runners last week with his performance. He did extremely well. But he's still 43% completion rate. It's not good. Now is the time to pick that up. Get him these short passes. Raise him up. He's had a good week. He looks like a player I mentioned before that plays off of confidence. When he's confident, he's going to play well. Just keep that. This is a game where you could go 3-3. This is a game where you could boost him up over 50% if he performs well. This is a game where you can get him running on his feet because he's far and away the team's lead in Russia by over 100 yards. No other running back from Milan has over 100 yards, which is insane. Speaking of which, let's get a run game started, man. Jock did good, got 66 yards in his first game as a running back perspective. But the run game is stagnant. Zach Bronkhorst is the only runner that has rushed in for a touchdown. That's obscene. Patrick Carr wasn't very good. Modest Puda has underperformed. They don't have very good run game. They don't have very good run protection. They have very good runners. I do think Jock's good, and he's going to be able to do it at a good percentage. It's just, with that offensive line in front of him, it's going to be a lot harder. DBs need to step up. The defensive backs from Milan are poor. They're playing very poorly. They've got better as some of the weeks have gone on, this is granted. But they are still 14th in pass yards allowed, and they have allowed 17 touchdowns through the air in the first 5 weeks. It's not good enough. It's more than 3 per game, minimum, just passing. For the perspective, they only have 5 passing touchdowns themselves, and 17 passing touchdowns allowed. They've only got 4 interceptions, and they've thrown 5 interceptions. So the DBs need to step up. I am going to go for a win for Milan now. I do think it's going to be close. I do think it'll be very close. I got a win in 26-20 against the Hair-Viant Throners. Another one I'm going to try and keep brief. The Htoic Mercenaries 0-4 versus the Stuttgart Surge, who are 4-0. This one should be a blowout. I could go on about Htoic all day, about how I think they're ruining their team, how I think they're going to have a mutiny within that team if they keep making these bad decisions. Everything that's coming out about this team is negative. I have not heard a good thing come out of Htoic in weeks. Releases, here, there, and everywhere. Consistency. Supporting the players, just giving them opportunities to succeed. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The offensive line is still poor. But the keys for success, they have a top 5 defense in the league. Can you believe that? They're 4th in rushing allowed, 5 in passing yards allowed, 4th in rushing yards allowed, and then 8th in points allowed. They have a good defense. Ken Htoic is an elite corner, and he's now gone. That's now going to go away. They've lost that. Same issues on the offensive line. It's been the same thing for weeks. I don't need to harp on it. They're not giving Carlton Aiken enough time, and he's not going to be able to do much behind the offensive line. Doesn't give him any help. Lastly, this is the thing I also feel very passionate about. Playing DBs at receiver ain't slick. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's not clever. It's not good football. Signing EDBs to play receiver is a bad idea. There are receivers that can come in. You released 2 of them. 3 of them. I do not think Benji Barnes, although he may disagree, is going to be a better receiver than Anton Kleiman or Diosef Rakolis. Chavarro, another very good player. He has never played receiver. and they're expecting him to play receiver. Sign Andre Serra. Sign Anton Jali. I don't care about the 3-game suspension. They need all they can get. It's poor in every sense of the word. If I speak on it too much, I'm going to get annoyed. Because it's awful. Stuttgart Surge, they have the best run defense in the league. Again, and they're going to be playing a team that can only run because Carthagen's the only player that can do it, because they don't have any offensive line. So how the fuck are they going to do much about running against the Stuttgart team? I don't know. Chris Malumbo's a great interior defensive lineman. I don't think he's talked about nearly enough. And he's one of the multiple mismatches on this field. There are a lot of mismatches. You've just released your best corner. So now you're going to have to move a backup player onto that position against Yannick Meyer, Lewis Geyer, Steigerwald, Kantar, Kai Hunter, that amazing offensive line, and possible American receiver, if Hazleton's fit or Stewart's back or whatever they choose to do, they could play 11 backups on offense and I think it could still win. To be honest. And Hennessy has been spectacular. It's been MVP favourite. He's 14-1 in terms of touchdowns and interceptions. He can carry on where he left off. I think he'll be out of this game by halftime. That's the kind of prediction I'm going to make. I don't think they're going to get much out of this. I'm going to go for 6 for Htoic, just because I believe in Carthagen as a quarterback. For Surge, I don't fucking know. Let's go for 70. I'm going to make them 70 points. I think they could do it. Alright, I've relaxed. Let's get on to Cologne versus Paris. Cologne, 1-2. Paris, 2-1. This one's an interesting matchup, I think, because I do think Cologne are an underrated team. They've had a lot of injuries, though. They do have injuries at key positions. Offensively, though, passing game absolutely needs to be a threat. Paris are not going to be scared of them at all if they can't pass the ball. They are 17th for passing yards, which is insane. Isaiah Weed only has 568 yards. He has 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Has been accurate with 62%. That's not awful. He just hasn't really been able to do much with it. And to scare this Paris defense, you're going to have to offer some kind of passing game. Paris do have fumble issues. They fumbled the ball multiple times against the Galaxy. The Cologne defense does have playmakers, and I think they could potentially maybe force the ball out. It's going to be hard, but they could do it, and I think that's a way that they could try and turn the tides. And getting after the run, Paris have been quite heavily reliant on the run. Although it hasn't been incredibly effective, I know probably some people are thinking, yes it has, but offensively they are 13th for rushing yards. I know they've only played 3 games. Whatever. We saw teams like the Ryan Fire stop their run. And then they needed to rely on the pass a little bit more. People got a little bit more flustered. They weren't able to get after it. Zach Edwards has fumbled. Augman's fumbled. They can get out to the run and they can make a difference. The Paris defensive backs have been locking the fuck up. The Paris DBs are insane. They might have some of the best DB talent in Europe, honestly. Emil Kolani, Chandler Jones, Kenny Florette, Marcel Beard, Saeed. There's a bunch of players in that secondary that can make a difference. Against his poor passing game, I think they're going to have a couple of interceptions. Marcel, I think I would predict to get one. He's playing a lot more safety at the moment. And I did curse the Ryan Fire by saying, they haven't had much for turnovers, and then Marcel got a turnover. I can see that happening again. Limit the mistakes that kill drives. I mentioned the fumbles. They could have lost against the Galaxy with those field goals. But they could have blown the Galaxy out if they didn't fumble at the end of those drives. They make a lot of mistakes. And, with the Ryan Fire as well, last drive of the ball game, 1 play, 90 seconds, just throw it up and it gets picked. So they make mistakes. They are certainly not perfect. In the same breath as their DBs, Paris have incredible receivers. Austin Mitchell, an amazing game 1, has slowed down since game 1. Hugo Tekedam has had a big burst out. He's got over 200 yards. Florian LaRose, I'm a big fan of. Sal, I'm a big fan of. Mwamba has been effective in the pass game when utilised. Mahonwu hasn't really played, and they've still had good successful options. Remy Berthelon is another legend of the French game. They can get creative, I think, with that much depth, and I think that'll be quite a big part. You're going to rotate guys in, keep people fit, keep people healthy. Against John Owens, you're going to have to give him different looks because he is such a good defensive back. He's very clever. So you're going to have to try and change it up, see if you can move receivers around and get people open. I think this would be quite a comfortable victory. I'm going to go for a 34-13 in favour of Paris. I think they get ahead early and they're just going to maintain that lead. Let's talk about the Berlin Thunder and the Prague Lions. Two of these teams have been under fire quite a lot. Berlin are 2-3. They did show a good game against Rhein Fire. They really did in the first half. And that is where it ends. And here's where the criticism begins. But on a real, like, that defense is phenomenal. That's never been the issue. But the second half woes are incredible. The defense does also struggle with the run as well. They're not perfect. They do have run deficiencies. They're ranked 16th against the run in the league. And same thing I always say about sample size. That's the facts. They're a great pass rush team. They lack an interior line. People are going to, I think, get on me about that. But then they'll watch the tape and go, you know what? Glenn did just go for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, it sounds silly when you go, oh, they're not very good against the run, but they've got Carl Kitchens and Emil Forvda, and they've got Aaron Grossman-Klein. They're all exterior guys. They don't have much of an interior line. So elite pass rush, poorer interior, and bad second half. For Prague, same stuff in a different week. Their offensive line's bad. They've had 15 sacks on Kyrie Laus. Whoever, if they stick with Kyrie Laus or if they go with a different quarterback, like, it's not going to make a difference. Because I've heard some rumors, that he's been under fire. He's gone under 50% passing. He's only got 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But it's not, you could put fucking Tom Brady back behind that offensive line. They're not going to do anything. He's been sacked 15 times, 3 games on average per game. And that's just not including what he does as a mobile threat. The defense can cause turnovers. There's a lot of players in this defense that I like. Alexander Borkovic. I'm going to do a video on Borkovic at some point. Jan Chris, another talented one. Oliver Abalilla, another very talented linebacker. But they're just not able to do much when they're on the field so often. They get tired. We saw the same thing with Milan a few weeks ago. The O needs to dink and dunk, I think. And this is, so much easier said than done with this offensive line. It is truly that bad. But they need to get the ball out really fast. They need to get Zuleka and Tyrese Johnson-Fisher out into space. They have 2 dynamic running backs. They have Radim Kaulos, who is a dynamic receiver. It's just got to be quick. We've seen a lot more of these long developing routes. And it's just not going to work. It's going to lead to them taking more sacks, honestly. I think they push ahead in the first, slow down in the second half, as we know that they do often. But I do think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to win 29-7. I can't see it being particularly close. The last game of the week, and boy does this one have ramifications going forward. Hamburg versus Frankfurt. I don't want it to go understated how important this game is for both teams. Frankfurt are 1-2, very much were expected to be the better team, has underperformed so far this year. Hamburg 2-1, both in the West. They're both weird teams. Hamburg are very weird. Hamburg, but if it's unorthodox, it works though. I still don't know about Javarian Smith. I watch too much tape on him at the moment. But he's a weird quarterback, but he just kind of gets it done. He's got 6 touchdowns. He's got 1 interception. He does need to be more accurate, but he's safe with the ball. And that's ultimately what you need. The run game has slowed down consistently though. They need better blocking up front. The run game has been kind of fucking awful the last couple of games. They have good running backs. You look at the yards, you think, oh, that's all right. And then you look at your longest yard, and it's an 86-yard run by Hardin Canedo, and that's pretty much all they've got. They've had a couple fumbles by Javarian, but he's only lost 1. Better up front blocking. And they've got one of the poorer offensive lines. They lost a lot of that offensive line in the offseason, especially Garrett Brandt, and that hole has not been filled. They can force turnovers, though, on Frankfurt. Frankfurt do throw a lot of picks. That's just facts. They make some bad decisions. They throw picks. Luke has always been quite a gunslinger, but he's already thrown 4 interceptions this year. They can force that, I think. They have rangy safeties like Mills. Ken Hike's just been released. Shit, imagine Ken Hike at Hamburg. Is that going to happen? I don't know. Do I have insight into that? Not at all. That's literally just me thinking off the dome, so don't take that as gospel at all. it would just be an interesting fit, I think. But they can force turnovers on Frankfurt. For Frankfurt, though, speaking of those turnovers, drive-killing mistakes need to stop. They are really, really shooting themselves in the foot with some of these drive killers. They have so many open players, open passing lanes, open rushing lanes, and they're just kind of making mistakes, mental errors, throwing the ball away, turnovers, bad play calling. Call it what you want. It needs to stop. The running game for them also cannot score at all. They've not scored a rushing touchdown. That's kind of mad. In 3 games, not 1. And they have Sandro Platzkammer still on the roster. He hasn't scored yet. He hasn't really played that much. He's only averaging 2.72 yards per carry in his 2 games. Fishback's done what he can. He's averaging nearly 4, so not bad. But they need to find a way to get into the damn end zone. Even Luke's a good runner. They need to find a way to get into the end zone. You can't just rely on it to be run game all the way. Cannot just rely on it to be pass game all the way. I mentioned this. I caught this during stream. I said, why the hell are they passing so much in the red zone? They were on the 5-yard line and passed it every single play. I don't know what if they're pass statting. I don't know, but it's weird. Do not underestimate Smith. I underestimated Smith, and then he let rip a few long balls, and all of a sudden they're winning by 35. He has Jarvis McClam, who is one of the best playmakers in the entire league. Straight, you cannot underestimate him. If you do, he could take off on his feet and hurt you. I still don't know what to think of him, per se. But what I know is that he's dangerous if you don't treat him with respect. I'm going to go for Frankfurt to win, though. I think it's going to be close, really do. I think it's going to be 20-26. I won't be surprised if it was the other way, though. Both of these teams have capacity to win, and both of them have capacity to lose for themselves. It's going to be an incredible week. Another week, another one finished. I got kind of ramped up during some of those breakdowns. It was an emotional week. It's been an emotional roller coaster, this league so far. This is only week 6, and it's been something. It really has. On the LF Live, go and check that out. I'll leave that in the description. Talked a lot about some of the players during the week and broke down each game that just happened in a bit more detail. Of course, power rankings also finished from yesterday's video. I'll put them in the description as well, as is also in the playlist. Digan Gomez video will be started tomorrow. We'll be doing the posters tomorrow. I'll try and make the posters tomorrow. Usually it just takes me a while. I say I'm going to do it tomorrow and it'll take me 2 days. Just because I get a creative block when I try and give myself timelines. But we'll see. Digan Gomez video will be out this week when I re-record London, because it's shit. I did a whole 2 days and I rewatched it. I was like, this is shit. So I got to re-record a lot of that. But this was a fun one. Yeah. Gonna cut it off here. You know what else stays? Kind of covered everything in my league in this roundup. But thank you very much. See you next time. Stay safe, stay sharp.